Hello everyone, here I am back at my Lowrey Lincolnwood Model SS from 1956. The problem with these type of instruments, or anything else I suppose electronic of this age, if you don't use it regularly, it doesn't last very long these days. And that's unfortunately the case with this particular organ. I, at one point, accidentally left the power on, probably for over a year one time, and of course it always worked after that. Now, if you turn it off for a month and then try to use it again, it goes up in smoke. And the latest maybe problem is this Candohm resistor, or Muter, depending on when it was made. I suppose the brand name changed a little bit. Muter Company, if I can get the camera to focus here, made these resistors called Candohm. What they are is, it's a wire wound resistor. If you take it apart, which I'm not going to take this one apart, cannot get the camera to focus for anything on here. There's a non-flammable core. I will not mention what it's made out of, or the, well, who knows what would happen here. So there's that non-flammable core with nichrome wire wound around it. And then there's some kind of, come on camera, you can do it. I guess I should have used a different one here. Normally this one does a reasonable job. But anyway, then there's this, I'm not sure what that material is surrounding the nichrome. And then of course you have this strange steel sheet metal stamped thing crimped around it. This type of steel, I'm not sure what it is. I've worked with a lot of different sheet metals, and this stuff is not quite like any of it. It sort of bends like copper, but has the strength of steel. There we go. When you try to open one of these things, you pretty much destroy it. And I'm not ready to do that to this one yet. This one here says B as in Bravo 6602-1. And I doubt that anybody has a catalog of these things anymore. It would be really handy if somebody did, then I would know what this resistor is. Now I've got another multi-section Candohm resistor in here that I have already made a really ugly replacement for. And the reason it's really ugly is intentional, because it takes an obscene amount of resistors to make a decent equivalent of this thing. And so I've had to rebuild this thing several times out of almost good enough resistors. As you can see, the ones in here are charred. Now I guess I'd have to go back and check and see if maybe they're charred to the point where they're open again, and I just have to replace them. That's not really a problem. What happened though, when I turned this thing on for the first time in I don't know how long, it let out more smoke than normal, and it continued to play, which was very strange. Normally when that multi-section resistor burns up, it doesn't play anymore. Now the first thing I noticed is there's a very loud 120 hertz hum coming out of the speaker, and that of course tells me that our filter capacitor, probably this one right here, is no good, which it's well overdue. I'm going to have to replace that. Now it's possible that that condenser dying put an extra strain on these other resistors, and that's what caused the problems here. This one sat right here, and it was when this happened, this thing was sizzling quite a bit, but I didn't see any smoke coming out of it. And it measures 100 ohms right now. I can't show it here. There's a stamped number on here. that says 244, but I don't know if that's the resistance or not. I've never seen one of these yet that actually had values stamped on it. So I don't know what that number is. There you can see it, 244. I'm going to assume for now that 100 ohms is either the correct value or close enough to make this thing work. But I will have to replace that filter condenser. And like I said, probably go over my artificial muter there. Maybe I'll put it together a little more a little more presentable next time. This organ is quite complex. It's hard to imagine, considering today's synthesizers and things, how this thing could be this complicated, but it is. And you really have to wonder, is it worth keeping all of this stuff running? Most people would say no, because you can synthesize most of the sounds pretty well. And I suppose these days, if you're really ambitious, you could synthesize this thing pretty accurately, but to me it's just not quite the same. I'll show you here what this thing has in it while I have it open, because I never normally get a chance to do this, make a video of this thing while I've got it open. If I ever have to replace this thing, I think I think that's the point where I've got serious trouble. I don't know what that is. If that's a toroid transformer, I suppose I could pop the screws off of it and look and see what it is, but I hate to do that. There's a coil underneath it, like a solenoid. Maybe it's a relay. That's I guess I'd have to power this thing up and flip some switches and see if that thing goes click click when I flip some switches. But that's one of the things I've always looked at in here and thought, I hope I never have to replace that. Everything else is pretty well replaceable, albeit difficultly and expensively. And that multi-section Candohm is a good example of that. I almost have to make a new resistor exactly like the original in order to make it work. I'd have to buy some nichrome wire and wind it somehow non-flammably. Don't know how you do that these days, because off-the-shelf resistors, you just need an inordinate amount of them to make this work. And I guess, you know, while I have this thing apart, I should measure all these other Candhoms, assuming they're all working, and write down the values so that in the future when I have this problem, I'm not guessing. I think that one there says the Muter Company Chicago. I can't actually see the letters, but I'm guessing that's what it says from what I've seen on some other ones. Maybe you can see it on the camera here. My eyes can't get down in there. And up inside the manuals here, there's some, I'm guessing these are, well, I'm not even going to guess what those are. Someday I'd like to get a schematic and service manual for this thing. I've never actually seen one. I've seen one for a different model of Lowrey organ, which is probably similar enough that it would work for this. Unfortunately, those are not technically available anymore. Somebody, somewhere, I'm sure I could get a hold of somebody that has one and maybe make a copy or something. And here you can see the enormous number of tubes that are in this thing. And of course the camera, there we go, doesn't like to focus. Now you may have seen another video where I had to fix D sharp, and you can see the two tubes that I did have to replace. I think I replaced one other tube in here, and maybe I'm wrong about that. It doesn't look like any of the other ones have been replaced. But that goes to show you that tubes aren't quite as fragile as a lot of people think they are. Tube layout, all generators. There you go. That's all the tubes that are in this thing. Auxiliary speaker jack, which is where I plug my Leslie speaker in. And master volume control. Never messed with that. I don't think there's a real good reason to. Although I suppose if you crank it up a little too high, you might get a little distortion, which might sound okay. And there's a tube socket. I guess I never really, or I probably did notice this, I just don't remember it. There's a tube socket that's not on the layout there, and maybe that's a plug for a proper Leslie speaker. I don't know. I think it would be strange if it was, because there are no controls on this organ for a Leslie speaker. You can see the swell pedal here, and I don't know if you call it a swell pedal on a spinet organ like this. And there's the famous Lowrey glide switch on the side of the pedal. Lets you make Hawaiian guitar noises. There's a damp chaser. Keeps the humidity out. This organ is in terrible cosmetic shape. I found it in the trash out in the rain, actually. Probably 25 years ago. And the veneer is pretty well trashed on it. And that's the way it was when I found it. But the keys were orange when I found it, and now they approximate a pretty decent white color, and I may even be able to get them whiter. There was so much tobacco filth on this keyboard, it was pretty amazing, actually. All the old things I've cleaned off, this one probably had the most tobacco filth. I always like these keys. They're heavy, they are quick to return. They have a pretty stiff spring in there. They're substantial. They're not like modern keyboards, I suppose. One of the pedals broke. I'm not sure when that broke. It was not like that when I got it. I think the plastic was cracked when I got it, and it broke the rest of the way later. I do have the rest of the pedal. Someday I'll reattach that. I think I already did once, but I didn't. I think I super glued it or something. I could do something a little more permanent the next time. So there you have it. That's where this thing's at right now. And with any luck, I'll get to the point of replacing that filter condenser, rebuilding my artificial muter, and then hopefully putting that other muter resistor back in there. And then maybe not turn this thing off for a couple of years, I suppose. It's pretty rare that I get to play it, and unfortunately most of the times that I could spend some time playing it are spent fixing it. But if you've bothered to watch this long and boring video this far, I do thank you for watching. Please do subscribe if you don't mind. It does help. And check out some of my other videos. Some of them are more and less boring than this one.